The grandfather clock struck 9 as Harold Lorne shifted in the leather armchair. Snowflakes drifted past the window of his son's Victorian home. At 68, the retired literature professor had grown accustomed to quiet evenings by the fire, especially since Eleanor's passing. The flames crackled as voices drifted from the kitchen. Harold wasn't one to eavesdrop, but Patricia's hushed tone caught his attention. "I can't do this anymore, Ethan." His daughter-in-law's voice was ice wrapped in silk. "Just wait," his son replied, barely audible. "Until when? He's been here 8 months already. We discussed this. After Christmas. We'll kick him out after Christmas." Harold's hand froze mid-reach for his tea. The porcelain cup suddenly seemed miles away. Dad left everything to rebuild after Mom died. His pension is barely enough. Patricia cut in. "This house is too small for 3 adults. Your father has options." Harold's chest tightened. Options? At his age? With arthritis climbing his spine and medication costs that made his eyes water? He'd given them everything, the down payment for this house, his life savings when Ethan's business faltered. He'd even sold his beloved collection of first editions. The conversation shifted to holiday plans. Harold stared into the dying embers, noticing how they resembled the fading light in his own eyes lately. Later that night, Harold stumbled to his bathroom. The dizziness hit again the 4th time this week. His reflection looked hollowed, skin ashen against the medicine cabinet mirror. 8 prescription bottles lined the counter, all managed by Patricia. "You'll forget otherwise," she'd insisted, taking over after he'd missed a dose in September. He gripped the sink as another wave of nausea hit. Strange how these spells began shortly after moving in. Harold reached for his pill organizer, the one Patricia filled weekly. The capsules looked different tonight. Were they always this shade of white? Fingering the tiny pill, he remembered Patricia's nursing background before she quit to focus on family. The bitter taste of his evening tea. The way she watched him drink it. The slow, unexplained weight loss. The fatigue that dragged at his bones. "Dad, you okay in there?" Ethan knocked. Harold dropped the pill back in place. "Fine," he called, voice steadier than he felt. He flushed the toilet for show and opened the door. "You look terrible," Ethan said, concern seeming genuine. Behind him, Patricia appeared in the hallway, watching with those calculating eyes. "Just tired," Harold managed. "I didn't know it yet, but she'd already been killing me for 18 months. Summer, 18 months earlier. That's when it started." Harold's decline. The dizzy spells came first. Small moments of vertigo dismissed as inner ear problems. Then stomach pains that burned like fire after meals. The doctor called it acid reflux, standard for his age. By fall, Harold's silver hair began falling out in clumps. His fingernails developed ridges. Blood tests showed anemia, nothing alarming. "You're pushing 70, doctor," Reeves had said. "The body starts to protest." What the doctor didn't know. Harold only experienced symptoms at Ethan and Patricia's house. Never during his weekly chess matches at the park or his volunteer shifts at the university library. Patricia had taken over his care with suspicious eagerness. "I'm a nurse, for heaven's sake," she'd told Ethan when he questioned her, hovering. "Your father needs help." She prepared special smoothies packed with immune boosters, herbal teas to cleanse his system. She organized his medications in color-coded containers. Each morning, the same routine. Patricia bringing tea, watching him drink it, collecting the empty cup. The bitter aftertaste lingered for hours. Harold started keeping a journal. Tuesday, nausea after breakfast smoothie. Friday, vomiting following evening tea. Sunday, Patricia, insisting on preparing his plate at dinner, nobody else's. The pattern emerged slowly, like a photograph developing in darkroom chemicals. One morning, Harold poured his tea into a potted plant when Patricia left to answer the phone. The peace lily died 3 days later. Desperate, he hit a mug after drinking half its contents. That night, while the house slept, he examined it under his reading lamp. White residue coated the bottom crystalline, not the calcium buildup from tap water. Harold remembered the case study from his criminology elective decades ago. The symptoms of chronic arsenic poisoning, gastrointestinal problems, hair loss, fatigue, anemia. His hands trembled. People don't suspect sweet-faced, cardigan-wearing daughters-in-law of murder. The next day, Harold claimed to have a university function and escaped to the public library. Using the ancient computer, he researched arsenic poisoning while printing articles on elder care options, his cover story. 3 blocks away, he found a private laboratory that tested for environmental toxins. The technician looked skeptical when Harold handed over a Ziploc bag containing his hair, nail clippings, and the residue scraped from the mug. "Results take 5 business days," she said. 5 days of Patricia's smoothies, 5 days of her watching him with those vulture eyes, asking how he felt with practiced concern. On day 4, Harold collapsed in the shower. Ethan rushed him to the emergency room while Patricia followed, clutching her handbag like a shield. "He's been declining for months," she told the doctor, her voice trembling perfectly. "Confusion, weakness. Sometimes I wonder if it's early dementia." The hospital released him with instructions to hydrate and rest. That evening, Patricia brought him special tea to help him sleep. The next morning, his cell phone vibrated. Unknown number. "Mr. Lorne, this is West Lab testing. Your results are ready." Harold's throat went dry. "And?" "The first test result came back and it confirmed my worst fear. Elevated arsenic levels consistent with intentional poisoning," the lab technician said, voice dropping. "Do you need me to contact authorities?" Harold ended the call, mind racing. Evidence meant nothing without proof of who administered the poison. He needed time, strategy. The hallway creaked Patricia, approaching with his morning tea. Harold slipped the phone under his pillow. "How are we feeling today?" Her smile never reached her eyes. "Weak," Harold mumbled, playing into her narrative. "Very confused." She nodded, seemingly pleased. "Doctor says that's to be expected. Drink up while it's hot." Harold pretended to sip, then feigned a coughing fit. Tea spilled across the bedsheets. "I'll make fresh," Patricia said, quickly removing the evidence. After she left, Harold captured a droplet from the sheets with a tissue, sealing it in a plastic bag. Later that afternoon, Ethan visited his bedroom. "Dad, we need to talk about assisted living." Harold noticed Patricia hovering in the doorway. "I'm not ready," he said, forcing his voice to quaver. "You're not safe alone anymore. The fall yesterday. I wasn't alone. I was here, with you, and Patricia." Something flashed in Patricia's eyes. "That's what I mean," Ethan said. "We can't watch you every minute. Patricia found those bills you were trying to pay twice. Bills Harold had never seen, checks he hadn't written. I'm just forgetful sometimes," Harold protested weakly. "It's more than that. Dr. Reeves is concerned about your blood work. He's suggesting neurological testing." Harold glanced at Patricia. She'd gotten to the doctor too. After they left, Harold forced himself up. His legs trembled, partly from weakness, partly from rage. He'd spent 40 years teaching critical thinking to students, yet failed to see the trap closing around him. His son's wife was poisoning him while systematically convincing everyone he was losing his mind. The why seemed obvious. Money. The house Harold had paid off. His pension. The life insurance policy naming Ethan sole beneficiary. Harold knew how this story ended. Patricia would increase the dosage after securing power of attorney. A peaceful death in his sleep. Tragic but not unexpected. His first attempt to reach out failed spectacularly. Harold's old colleague, Benjamin, visited that Saturday. When Harold tried explaining his suspicions, Patricia appeared with lemonade. "Poor Harold," she said, smoothing his blanket. "The delusions come and go. Doctor says it's part of the process." Benjamin's eyes filled with pity for Harold's supposed dementia, not his actual predicament. Later, Harold heard Patricia on the phone, becoming paranoid, making accusations. "Might need memory care sooner than we thought." That night, Harold made his decision. If they expected a doddering old man losing his faculties, he'd give them exactly that. He'd become so invisible, so helpless, they'd stop watching him. Gaslighted and cornered, Harold realized truth was his only weapon, and truth needed evidence. "I started recording everything, and that's when I saw what she really did when I wasn't watching." Harold waited 3 days before making his move. 3 days of shuffling through the house with vacant eyes, 3 days of mumbling incoherently when questioned. Patricia relaxed her vigilance slightly, convinced her plan was working. On Thursday, when Ethan drove Patricia to her book club, Harold moved quickly. His old student Felix had dropped off a package at the back door, a smoke detector with a built-in camera. Harold's arthritic fingers worked methodically, replacing the kitchen ceiling detector with the modified version. The red recording light blinked once, then disappeared into stealth mode. By evening, Harold had installed 3 more: living room, hallway, and above his own bedroom door. Taking a nap, he announced loudly the next morning, then crept to the guest room where he'd hidden a tablet. The camera, feed loaded. Patricia moved through the kitchen with practiced efficiency. She opened a recipe book, removed a false page, and extracted a small amber vial from behind it. Harold increased the volume. Patricia hummed Silent Night while tapping white powder into his teacup. 3 taps, not too much. She stirred clockwise, exactly 3 rotations, then returned the vial to its hiding place. Harold's hand trembled, not from poison but from vindication. He wasn't crazy. The footage continued. Patricia carrying the tea upstairs. Patricia watching him drink. Patricia taking the empty cup away, rinsing it thoroughly. Over the next week, Harold documented everything. Patricia adding powder to his food when plating his portions. Patricia replacing his heart medication with identical-looking capsules. Patricia telling Ethan that Harold had confused episodes that never happened. The hardest footage to watch came Saturday night. Ethan questioning whether his father needed such intensive care. Patricia's hand sliding under the table, resting on his thigh. "Your father needs us both," she whispered. "Trust me." The bedroom door closed behind them. Minutes later, Harold forced himself to continue watching, cataloging, organizing evidence chronologically. Each day brought new footage, new betrayals. He learned Patricia had been accessing his bank accounts. $5,000 transferred to an unknown account labeled Emergency Fund. His checkbook showed withdrawals he never made. On December 10th, Harold nearly revealed his hand when he overheard Patricia on the phone. "The lawyer says we need power of attorney before moving him to assisted living. No, he's deteriorating rapidly. After the holidays would be ideal." Harold retreated to his room, rage burning like acid. He needed more than evidence. He needed a plan. Using the burner phone Felix had provided, Harold contacted Clara Wells, former student and now attorney specializing in elder abuse. He sent her encrypted files of Patricia's poisoning routine. "This is attempted murder," Clara whispered during their call. "We need to involve police." "Not yet," Harold insisted. "She's too clever. I need something she can't escape from." "What do you have in mind?" Harold outlined his idea, watching another video of Patricia adding poison to his evening meal. I knew now how she was doing it, but not why. The why revealed itself through Patricia's phone calls, which Harold now recorded through the hidden cameras. "Mom, I told you we're handling it," she said one afternoon, pacing the kitchen. "By February, we'll have the house and accounts." "Yes, I'm being careful. He trusts me completely." Later came a call to a real estate agent. "We're thinking of listing in January." "Yes, after the current occupant moves to assisted living." No renovations needed. Harold's house paid off decades ago and left to Ethan with the understanding his father would always have a home there. Patricia planned to sell it before his body was cold. The manipulation extended beyond poisoning. Harold watched recordings of Patricia removing mail from his room, letters from old colleagues, university announcements, bank statements. She deleted voicemails before he heard them. Most disturbing was how she manipulated Ethan. "Your father accused me of stealing his watch today," she told him one evening, tears brimming. "The same watch he gave you for your birthday last month." Harold had never mentioned his watch, never even noticed it missing. The doctor said these paranoid delusions would get worse. Ethan sighed, pulling her close. "I'm sorry you're dealing with this. I do it for you," Patricia murmured. "For our future." Harold documented everything in his journal, which he kept hidden inside a hollowed-out copy of King Lear, a play about a father betrayed by his children. His body weakened despite his attempts to avoid the poisoned food. Patricia grew suspicious when he started, skipping meals. "You need to eat, Harold," she insisted, watching him with narrowed eyes. "Not hungry," he'd mumble, playing the confused old man. She countered by adding the powder to his water, to juice, even to the applesauce she spoon-fed him when his hands shook too badly to feed himself. Each day required a performance. Harold shuffled instead of walked, asked repetitive questions, left water running and doors open, called Ethan by his childhood nickname, pretending confusion. Patricia documented every incident. In a notebook she showed doctors and visitors building her case for his removal. Meanwhile, Harold worked through Clara to execute his plan. "The property trust is established," Clara confirmed via text. "The house is now listed with the conditions you specified." "And the recordings?" Secured in 3 locations. Police have been briefed, but will wait for your signal. Harold deleted the messages immediately. The chess game was reaching its critical phase. Each day brought Christmas closer, the deadline Patricia had set for his removal. Harold could feel the poison accumulating in his system. Real weakness overlaid his performed frailty. Time was running out. On December 20th, Harold overheard Patricia on the phone with a memory care facility. Yes, after the holidays. No, his son has power of attorney. Rapid onset dementia. That night, Harold texted Clara. Accelerate everything. It's time. He stared at the ceiling, listening to Patricia and Ethan wrapping presents downstairs. His tea sat untouched beside him, the white powder visible against the dark porcelain. I told Clara I didn't want justice after I died. I wanted it before Christmas. Clara moved with surgical precision. By December 21st, Harold's house was officially listed with Blackstone Realty under a blind trust. The asking price 30% below market value, guaranteed immediate interest. 3 offers already, Clara texted. All above asking. Harold deleted the message and continued his charade of mental decline. He shuffled through the house in mismatched socks, asked the same questions repeatedly, and left the faucet running, all while avoiding Patricia's poisoned offerings. Patricia's confidence grew with each passing day. She'd stopped bothering to hide her contemptuous looks when Ethan wasn't watching, the predator sensing weakness in her prey. I've scheduled a tour at Pinewood Memory Care for the 26th, she told Ethan over dinner. They have an opening in their secured wing. Harold pretended not to understand, focusing on pushing food around his plate. Don't you think it's too soon? Ethan asked, guilt shadowing his features. Patricia placed her hand over his. The doctor said his condition could deteriorate rapidly. We need to be prepared. That night, Harold reviewed the final elements of his plan. The police had copies of the poisoning footage. The lab had confirmed arsenic in his system. Clara had secured a buyer for the house who agreed to the unusual closing conditions. Only one piece remained. On December 23rd, Felix delivered a small package, a flash drive disguised as a Christmas ornament. Harold hung it prominently on the tree. What's that, Dad? Ethan asked, noticing the unusual decoration. Memory, Harold replied, tapping his temple. Important to preserve memories. Ethan smiled sadly, misinterpreting the comment as another sign of confusion. Patricia watched from the doorway, eyes calculating. Harold, I made your special tea. He'd been dumping her concoctions in potted plants, toilet bowls, and sink drains for days. The Boston fern by his bedroom window had shriveled to brown stalks. Christmas Eve tomorrow, Harold said, accepting the cup but not drinking. Yes, Patricia smiled thinly. One last family Christmas. The phrase chilled him despite its truth. It would indeed be their last Christmas together, just not in the way Patricia planned. That evening, Harold texted Clara. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. She replied immediately. Everything's ready. Harold spent the night reviewing his evidence one final time, listening to the Christmas carols floating up from downstairs. Patricia's voice rose above the music, laughing at something Ethan said. How had she hidden her true nature so completely? The sociopath behind the perfect daughter-in-law facade. Morning brought fresh snow and final preparations. Harold tucked the flash drive into his sweater pocket, placed a second copy under the tree's skirt, arranged for Felix to be nearby with a third. Redundancies. The professor in him had always emphasized having multiple backup plans. By evening, the house smelled of roast turkey and pine. Ethan hung stockings while Patricia arranged presents beneath the glittering tree. The perfect family Christmas preserved in photographs Patricia would show at Harold's funeral. Not knowing that her performance had already been upstaged, I wasn't sure what would kill me first, her poison or the waiting. Christmas Eve arrived with fresh snow and forced cheer. Patricia hung mistletoe, played carols, and arranged cheese platters while Ethan mixed eggnog in the kitchen. Harold watched from his armchair, the flash drive heavy in his pocket. The countdown had begun. Special tea for the holiday, Patricia said, presenting him with a festive red mug. Steam curled from the surface like ghost fingers. Harold accepted it with trembling hands, not entirely an act anymore. Months of low-dose poisoning had taken their toll. Tradition, Patricia added, her smile never reaching her eyes. You shouldn't lift a finger tonight. The living room glowed with string lights reflecting off ornaments. Family photos lined the mantel. Ethan as a child, Eleanor before cancer claimed her, Harold in his professor's robes. Patricia had added herself to this gallery, inserting her presence into family history. Harold raised the mug in acknowledgement but didn't drink. Instead, he set it on the side table deliberately. "You've been very kind to me, Patricia," he said, voice steadier than it had been in weeks. Almost too kind. The air shifted. Ethan looked up from arranging presents, frowning. "Dad, you okay?" Harold kept his eyes on Patricia. "I've been thinking about family legacies, what we leave behind." Patricia's smile tightened. "Harold's getting philosophical." She laughed, too brightly. "Must be the holiday spirit." "Spirit?" Harold nodded. "Appropriate word. Did you know arsenic was once called inheritance powder in medieval times?" The room went silent, except for Bing Crosby, crooning about white Christmases. Patricia's composure cracked slightly. "What an odd thing to say." "Is it?" Harold reached into his pocket. "I've been reflecting on what's been added to my life recently. And what's been taken away." Ethan stood, concern etching his features. "Dad, you're not making sense. I haven't been making sense for months, according to your wife." Harold withdrew the flash drive. "But sometimes clarity comes when you least expect it." Patricia moved toward him. "Harold's getting tired. Those medications." "The medications you've been replacing?" Harold asked quietly. "Or the powder you've been adding to my tea?" Ethan froze. "What are you talking about?" Harold slid the flash drive across the coffee table. His hand trembled partly from weakness, partly from the weight of the moment. "Play it." Patricia lunged for the drive, but Ethan was faster. He picked it up, confusion giving way to something darker as he looked between his wife and father. The doorbell rang, its cheerful tone incongruous with the tension. Patricia's face drained of color. "Don't answer that." Ethan hesitated, the flash drive clutched in his fist. The doorbell rang again, more insistent. "It's time," Harold said simply. Ethan connected the flash drive to the television, ignoring Patricia's protests. The screen flickered to life. Patricia appeared in high definition, humming Silent Night, while measuring white powder into Harold's teacup. The timestamp showed December 22nd, yesterday morning. The footage switched to Patricia replacing pills in Harold's medication organizer, then to her on the phone discussing accelerated memory decline with a doctor who'd never actually examined Harold. What is this?" Ethan stammered, his voice barely audible over the carol still playing from the stereo. Patricia switched tactics instantly. "It's not what it looks like," she insisted, tears appearing on command. "Your father's been hallucinating. That's you." Ethan pointed at the screen, where Patricia was now discussing selling the house with a realtor. "That's our kitchen." Yesterday, the doorbell rang a third time. Harold nodded toward the door. "You should answer that." Patricia blocked Ethan's path. "This is ridiculous. He's manipulating you, editing videos to seem like arsenic poisoning presents with specific symptoms." Harold interrupted. "Gastrointestinal distress, hair loss, fatigue, arrhythmia, all symptoms I've experienced since moving in here." Patricia's facade cracked completely. Rage transformed her face into something unrecognizable. "You pathetic old man," she hissed. "You think anyone will believe you? A confused old professor with dementia." The confession hung in the air between them. Harold remained calm. "You're right, Patricia. My word against yours wouldn't be enough." "Exactly." She sneered, regaining composure. "Ethan, he needs help, professional help." "But it's not just my word you need to worry about," Harold continued. "It's the lab tests showing arsenic in my system, the documented evidence of my declining health coinciding with your special food and drink, the recordings of you discussing my convenient death with your mother." The doorbell became a persistent knocking. "You have no proof," Patricia whispered, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. Harold's smile was gentle. "That's where you're wrong. You see, I'm not the one you need to convince." The front door opened. Ethan had slipped away during their exchange. Clara stepped in first, her professional demeanor a stark contrast to the holiday decorations surrounding them. Behind her stood two police officers and a man in a suit who introduced himself as Detective Warren. "Patricia Green," Clara said, opening a file folder. "You're under arrest for attempted murder." Patricia lunged toward the back door, but one of the officers intercepted her. As they recited her rights, Patricia's composure shattered completely. She screamed accusations at Harold, then broke down sobbing when handcuffs closed around her wrists. Ethan stood frozen, the flash drive still clutched in his hand like a talisman. "I trusted her," he whispered as Patricia was led away. "I believed every word." Harold placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "We believe what we need to believe, until we can't anymore." Through the window, Harold watched the police cruiser pull away, Patricia's pale face visible in the rear window. And just like that, she was the one who'd been poisoned all along. Only hers was the kind that destroys everything she ever wanted. January brought bitter cold and a strange, hollow quiet to the house. Detective Warren had been thorough, discovering arsenic in the false-bottomed recipe book and in Patricia's personal effects. The evidence was overwhelming. Ethan moved through rooms like a ghost, grief and guilt shadowing every step. He'd been both victim and unwitting accomplice. "I should have seen it," he repeated during their rare conversations. The signs were there. Harold, now receiving proper medical treatment, felt strength returning gradually. The poison would leave long-term damage, nerve pain, digestive issues, potential kidney problems, but he would survive. Unlike his relationship with his son, the gulf between them widened daily. Ethan couldn't meet his father's eyes. Harold couldn't find words to bridge the chasm of betrayal. On a snowy Tuesday, Harold stood at the living room window, watching a realtor hammer a bright sold sign into the frozen yard. "You're really going through with it?" Ethan asked from the doorway. Harold nodded. "The house sold above asking. Closing is next week. Where will you go?" "Riverdale Gardens has an opening. It's a good place, independent living apartments with medical staff nearby." Silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken accusations. "She told me you were losing your mind," Ethan finally whispered, voice breaking. "I believed her." Harold turned from the window. "Belief is comfort. Truth is pain. But pain keeps us honest." Ethan's shoulders slumped. "I don't know how to fix this." "Some things can't be fixed," Harold replied. "Only rebuilt." Later that afternoon, Clara arrived with closing documents. Harold signed them methodically, officially transferring ownership of his house of 40 years. "The trust is established as requested," Clara confirmed. "The proceeds are secure." Ethan appeared in the doorway. "What trust?" Harold met his son's gaze directly. "I've created a trust for Tyler." Ethan's son, Harold's grandson, lived with his mother in Colorado following a bitter divorce 3 years earlier. Patricia had systematically eliminated contact with them, claiming the ex-wife was unstable. "The house proceeds will fund Tyler's education and provide quarterly living stipends until he's 30, Harold explained. "You're named secondary trustee after Clara." Ethan's eyes widened. "After everything that happened, everything I did, family isn't defined by mistakes," Harold said simply. "It's defined by what we choose to rebuild after them." That evening, Ethan placed a framed photograph on Harold's bedside table. Tyler at his last birthday, grinning with a missing front tooth. "I called Melissa today," Ethan said quietly. "Tyler's coming to visit next month." Harold stared at the boy's face Eleanor's eyes, Ethan's smile, untouched by the poison that had infected their family. "He deserves a future that isn't built on lies." Ethan nodded, tears streaming unchecked. "I'll make it right, Dad, somehow." After Ethan left, Harold traced his grandson's face through the glass, something breaking loose inside him. "He left the photo of that boy on my bedside table. I hadn't cried in years until that night." Spring arrived, melting snow, and old resentments. Harold sat by the window in his new apartment at Riverdale Gardens, watching cardinals build a nest in the courtyard maple tree. His health had improved with proper treatment. The tremors remained, and some days his vision blurred, but the doctors called his recovery remarkable for a man his age. What they didn't understand was the power of purpose. Survival had become his final lecture, his last lesson in resilience. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Lorne, your son and grandson are here." Harold pressed the button. "Send them up." Tyler burst in first, 10 years old and boundless energy. "Grandpa, I got an A on my science project." Harold accepted the boy's exuberant hug, meeting Ethan's eyes over his grandson's head. Their relationship was healing slowly, weekend visits bridging old wounds. "Show me this famous project," Harold said, clearing space on the coffee table. While Tyler arranged his solar system model, Ethan handed Harold an envelope. "What's this?" "Final sentencing was yesterday," Ethan said quietly. 20 years. No possibility of parole for 15. Harold nodded, placing the envelope aside unopened. Patricia's fate no longer concerned him. After Tyler's demonstration and lunch in the dining hall, Ethan took the boy swimming in the community pool. Harold declined to join them, fatigue settling into his bones. Alone, he opened his journal, no longer a record of poisoning but a testament to rebuilding. He wrote of Tyler's visit, of Ethan's careful efforts at reconciliation, of the cardinal nest visible from his window. Life continuing, despite everything. The television murmured in the background a news story about an elderly man who'd exposed his caretaker's attempted murder plot. The reporter called it a remarkable case of courage and quick thinking. Harold smiled at the simplification. It wasn't courage that had saved him, but observation. The professor's training to notice patterns, inconsistencies, the spaces between what people said and what they did. His phone chimed with a text from Clara. Trust paperwork finalized. Tyler's future is secure. Harold typed back. Thank you for everything. Snow had covered the ground that night in December when he'd overheard Patricia's whispered plan. Now spring buds decorated the same world, transformed by time and truth. He turned to his journal again, writing the words that had been forming since that Christmas Eve confrontation. She whispered, they'd kick me out after Christmas. But by New Year's, she was the one leaving in handcuffs. Harold closed the journal, watching the cardinals return to their nest. He wasn't bitter, wasn't broken, merely alive and alert to life's unexpected turns. Sometimes justice doesn't shout, he murmured to the empty room. It whispers, just loud enough for the guilty to hear it before the world does. Through his window, the late afternoon sun illuminated the courtyard where Ethan and Tyler were returning from the pool, laughing together. Harold watched them, finding peace in the sight. The future unfolding, without poison, without lies. Sometimes the best revenge is letting evil people hang themselves with their own rope.